You've heard it 1,000 times without ever knowing whose ghost was inside it. That deep, hungry growl of a Mercury outboard waking up on a cold morning, the sound that means the day is finally starting. Behind that sound is a man almost nobody remembers, and a story that will stay with you. Because the man who built the most feared engine on the water spent his whole life trying to prove he was good enough, and he never once believed it. Before we dive in, hit subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from. This is the full story, not the company version, the human one. It starts with a wound, the kind that never really closes. He was a farm boy from Wisconsin, brilliant with his hands, the sort of mind that takes a machine apart in his head before he ever touches it. And in 1927, freshly trained as an engineer, he landed a job at the biggest name in outboard motors in the country, Evinrude, the dream job. He lasted about 3 months. They let him go for arguing too hard, too often, about how things should be designed, and they sent him out the door like he was nothing. Imagine being that young, that gifted, and being told by the best in the business that there was no place for you. He never forgot that day, not for the rest of his life. For 11 long years after that, he disappeared into ordinary work, climbing the ranks at another company, good at his job, quietly carrying that rejection around like a stone in his chest. Most men would have made their peace with it. He couldn't. There was something in him that needed to prove the whole world wrong, and he had no idea yet how he was ever going to do it. And here is where the strangest twist of his whole life comes in. In 1939, he scraped together every dollar he could find and bought a bankrupt little factory in a small Wisconsin town. He wasn't chasing boats. He had no grand plan to take on Evinrude. He bought that place to build dairy equipment, of all things, milking machines for farmers. But sitting inside that failed factory were a few hundred outboard motors that nobody wanted. Broken, rejected, sent back by the store that ordered them because they didn't work. Defective cast-offs gathering dust in the dark. And something about those forgotten, thrown-away little engines spoke to a man who knew exactly what it felt like to be rejected and set aside. So he fixed them. He tore into those broken motors and made them better than they had ever been. And he sold them, and the orders came back asking for more. And somewhere in those long nights bent over engines nobody believed in, the wound in him turned into a fire. He gave his new motors a name borrowed from the Roman god of speed, Mercury, and the farm boy who had been thrown away was suddenly, quietly, in business for himself. Then the war came, and it tested him in a way the lake never could. The country needed engines, and it needed them perfect, because men's lives were going to ride on them, and he delivered. His little company built motors for the war effort, good enough to earn one of the nation's highest honors for a factory, the kind of recognition that told a farm boy from nowhere that his hands, the hands Evinrude had waved away, could build things the country itself depended on. For most men, that would have been enough. It would have been the proof they spent a lifetime hunting for. For him, it barely registered. The hole inside him was deeper than any metal could fill. What happened next wasn't ambition. It was obsession, the kind that swallows a man whole. He did not want to build a good outboard. He needed to build the best one that had ever existed, and he would let nothing on this earth stand between him and that. He poured himself into every bolt and every casting, inventing things nobody had thought of, chasing a perfection that lived only in his own head. To him, a motor that ran well was a motor that hadn't yet been made to run better. The work was never finished. It could never be finished, because the thing he was really trying to fix wasn't the engine at all. He found himself a secret lake, hidden away down in Florida, far from the eyes of anyone who might be watching, and he turned it into his own private world. They simply called it Lake X, and the name stuck. Down there, away from the world, he chased a single impossible dream: to prove his engines could run longer and harder than anything any rival had ever dared put on the water. So he ran them, around the clock, day after day after day, week after week, for tens of thousands of miles without ever shutting them off, refueling them on the move while they screamed across that lonely lake. And when it was done, every boater in America knew the name Mercury meant an engine that simply would not quit. And maybe that's the part he never understood about what he'd made. Out there, far from his secret lake, a father was loading his kids into a small boat on a Saturday morning, reaching back and pulling a cord, and the motor caught on the first try, the way it always did, and carried them out to the spot where the fish were biting, and the day was theirs. That father never knew Carl Kiekhaefer's name. He never knew about the wound, or the lake, or the years of fury poured into that little engine. He only knew it started every time, that he could trust it with the people he loved most. The frightened, furious man had reached into the lives of millions of people he would never meet, and given them their best days on the water, and he gave it to them by chasing something he could never give himself. But the same fire that built the empire burned everyone who got too close to it. Down at that lake, he ruled like a king who trusted no one. He built a hotel for his men so they never had to leave, fed them 4 meals a day, and forbade them from drinking, from fishing, from so much as driving into town. He couldn't understand why they would ever want to go. He had given them everything, hadn't he? Men feared him. They called him an ogre behind his back, a tyrant, and they weren't wrong. And yet underneath all that iron was a man ruled by something he could never say out loud, a bottomless terror of being rejected, of failing, even of being loved. The hardest man on the water was, on the inside, the most frightened. When he wanted to show the whole country what his engines could do, he didn't buy an ad. He went stock car racing, and he did it the way he did everything, with total, suffocating control. He showed up with matching trucks and matching uniforms and the best cars money could build, in a sport full of poor Southern boys who had never seen anything like him, and he beat them. He beat them so badly it stopped being a competition. His team won race after race after race, championship after championship, until the crowds grew to resent the cold Wisconsin millionaire who turned their beloved sport into a machine. Even his own champion drivers couldn't take it. He kept them on a leash so tight that he would not let them share a room with their own wives the night before a race. And one by one, the very men winning for him walked away. So he proved his point, and then, just like that, he quit. He had never really wanted the trophies. He wanted the world to admit he was the best, and it had. And now, finally, he turned to face the thing that had haunted him for 30 years. Evinrude, the company that had thrown him out as a young man. He went after them with everything he had, not just out on the water, but in a long, personal, almost obsessive campaign to tear down the very legend their founder was built on. This was not about market share anymore. This was the rejected boy, grown into a powerful man, finally hitting back at the people who told him he was not good enough. He had carried that for half a lifetime. He was never, ever going to let it go. But here is the part that should break your heart a little, because every empire built on a wound demands its payment in the end. To grow, he sold his company to a giant corporation, and the deal turned to ash in his hands. The stock he took collapsed. The fortune he thought he'd won melted away. And worst of all, he had to stand by and watch strangers in suits take control of the one thing in this world that was truly his. He stayed on, but he was taking orders now from men he couldn't stand, slowly being pushed to the edges of the empire his own 2 hands had built. The man who could never be controlled by anyone had handed himself over to the very thing he hated most, and it was said that only when he was gone would that corporation finally be free of him. And the family, the wife, the children, the ordinary love that an ordinary life is built on, that was the bill that came due quietly, in the background, year after year, while he was down at the lake, or out at the track chasing a feeling he could never quite catch. He gave the Empire everything. There wasn't always enough left over for the people who simply wanted him home. That is the cruelest math of a life like his. He won the thing he chased, and he lost so much of what he never thought to hold on to. And then, near the end, the world handed him a moment so strange it almost feels written. The boating industry's highest honor that year carried the name of one man, the founder of Evinrude, the very company that had fired a brilliant, difficult young engineer half a century before and told him there was no place for him. And they gave that award to Kiekhaefer. The boy they threw away walked up and accepted a trophy named after the man whose company rejected him. If he ever let himself feel anything that day, he never showed it. He had spent his entire life trying to hear someone say he was good enough. And it came at last, from the one place he'd never stopped trying to prove wrong. He died not long after, in the same Wisconsin country where he'd started. And the strange thing is that the world moved on and mostly forgot his name, the way it forgets almost everyone in the end. But he is still here. He is in that growl on a cold morning, in every Mercury that catches and idles and carries somebody's family out onto the water for one more good day. The thrown-away farm boy who was told he wasn't enough built a thing that outlived him, outlived his enemies, and still runs strong on lakes he never saw. He spent his whole life afraid of being forgotten, and in the end, he made himself impossible to forget. If this story stayed with you, hit subscribe so the next one finds you when it's ready.